Hello everyone, welcome to the Green Man channel. Hope you're all good and well. So time for a Sunday album review. This time I'm reviewing the second studio album by BDRMM, and this is their release titled I Don't Know, which came out on Friday the 30th of June via Rock Action, and the album is 8 tracks and it's just over 40 minutes in length. So I am vaguely familiar with this band, and I say vaguely familiar because I listened to a couple of their songs from their debut album back in 2020 that was called Bedroom. And they remind me a lot of the band Div, that's spelt D-I-I-V, because they have this sort of, dream pop sound, which is quite upbeat at times. And it just took me back to the sort of sound that D-I-I-V had, certainly on those early kind of 2010s albums. But this album incorporates and makes quite an abundant use of electronics as well. And it's slightly more of a soundscapey style album, I would say, on the whole, although there are lyrics, there are songs with some relatively memorable vocal parts as well. And, for all of its shoegaze and indie rock tendencies, I would say there is quite a strong element of sort of a certain era of Radiohead here. And even the vocalist, Ryan Smith, the way he sings sometimes almost reminds me of that kind of very somber style that Tom York sings with in Radiohead. So I think I'm getting towards the sound of this band gradually here, but this is the sort of thing I think you can expect from this album. It's sort of quite an electronic style album, still pretty shoegazy, still pretty indie rock, but with a bit of a Radiohead touch to it as well. So let's go into the tracks on this release from BDRMM a little bit more. You start off with a track called Alps, which has a very gradual, certainly an atmospheric style introduction, which gradually builds into these quite dynamic drum beats and makes use of those electronics I've mentioned, with very whispery vocals kind of slightly underneath the music as well. And that's the kind of thing you can expect from this band. And I think it's quite good as an intro track to give you a sense of the album. But there are some slightly different styled tracks as you move through the album. So the next track is a bit more of the sort of, this is one of the singles I think of the album, and it certainly has the feel of a single because it actually has a chorus which is a little bit more memorable. Vocalist Ryan Smith sings the line, "Be careful of yourself," and then "Prepare for something else," something like that anyway. And that's what makes, for me, on the first listen, it was one of the more memorable parts of the album actually. So there's a track I really like on here called "We Fall Apart," which has a nice repeating airy expression of the vocal lines, and the track kind of gradually evolves into quite a beautiful soundscape towards the end as well that I really liked. It kind of was a little bit ambient, but quite a pleasing, unexpected but turn that sort of made sense in the context of the song as well. So I quite enjoyed that track, "We Fall Apart." Another song I really liked on this release was "Hidden Cinema." Interesting title of the track, right? But it has this kind of bubbling sound effects and waves of synth and build up a really, really cool electronic atmosphere. But I also enjoy the lyrics and the singing in this track as well, which sort of, a bit like the title of the song, "Hidden Cinema," that's kind of the image that almost comes to mind, really. It's a song which is, so beautifully textured. You kind of are looking out for something to come out of the sound. So it all does feel a little bit like there's something hidden in the track. And in that way, the title of this song, "Hidden Cinema," is kind of apt, I think, for the song itself. It's just quite an interesting, not sure I can describe it perfectly, but it's just an interesting song on this album that I actually really liked, and just has this kind of a driving electronic sound effects throughout the whole thing. Pulling Stitches is a slightly heavier, more distorted track with, My Bloody Valentine flavoured guitar sounds, and those Tom York vocals kind of gliding above it. It sort of creates this bit of a sense of anxiety with the combination of those vocals and the fuzzier guitars in the mix as well. I kind of got it's slightly disorienting, that track, but a pretty good track on the album nonetheless. And the final track, of Final Movement, is more of one of these kind of, it's very slow kind of build up. The singer kind of sings for the first half of the track and then it sort of just goes into sort of more ambient textures once again, and more into the soundscapes that we are by now familiar with in this particular release. So this was definitely an album, you know, this is the kind of album that is kind of, I think, going to grow on me a little bit over time, but it's kind of hard to say at the moment. I feel like it is an album that maybe does need time, although my gut feeling is I quite like this album as an album to put on and sort of escape to. But it doesn't also feel like an album I instantly want to go back to either. So I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. There were a couple of tracks that I really liked, and I think Hidden Cinema for me is possibly the one that I'm going to enjoy the best. But there are a few other good tracks like the opener. I like Be Careful, and Pulling Stitches was kind of cool too. So I think I'm going to give this album a 7 out of 10 with the right to maybe revise that score at another stage. You know, it is possible this 7 out of 10 could become a little higher with time. But otherwise, hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget, you can drop a sub to the channel if you like album reviews. I do reviews of quite a few different things. I mean, generally metal and hard rock, but I also cover indie, shoegaze and alternative stuff from time to time as well. And there is also sci-fi, fantasy and horror content on this channel. It's a bit of a wild channel. It kind of goes all over the place sometimes. But anyway, thanks very much for tuning in to The Green Man. Until next time, take care. Bye for now.